Computer loading sequence.
My official title is I'm the executive director of an organization called the Association of Film Commissioners International. It's a body that started in the States in the 60s, based out of the realization at the time that there was a need for a government-driven entity, an impartial body at the ground level who would assist in making filming possible on location. And now there are 340 of these entities, film commissions, film offices around the world. What we do as an organization essentially is to try and coordinate those entities in such a way that we provide education and training for film commissions. We provide access and opportunity for them to get in front of their marketplaces through events and publications and the website. And my job is to coordinate the whole thing. The biggest impact that I've seen is, at the same time as this global recession, one of the interesting sort of counterparts to that is that people stay home more. And people want to stay home more, they want to consume video product at home. So at the same time as the recession, there has been this odd, sort of at the same time, a greater demand for product. As in, looking from the international perspective, the thing that I've noticed more is that the travel to a destination to film has cut down dramatically. I was talking to the AICP, the the Commercial Producers Association in the States. They dropped down to being only 9% of their production was happening internationally last year, which is huge. We hear it all the time in the stills sector in South Africa that clients, advertising agencies in Europe are actually not allowing their clients, their businesses to travel outside of Europe to make their productions anymore. So I think this is the greatest challenge that you have in South Africa, is that we rely on a lot of inbound travel to get our work done. The filmmaking process, I don't think, has changed terribly much when it comes to how a set works from a sort of a governmental perspective. And I don't think it has particularly, at this point in time, influenced how production happens. Where the biggest change I've seen is in distribution, and the impact on, for instance, the whole debate in the States at the moment around when product is released to the market. Where you have theatre owners who have bought the opportunity to screen a film for a particular period of time, but members of the public don't want to wait. They want to be able to consume when they want to consume. And so the whole nature of how distribution is going to roll out in the future is going to completely change because of digital. Completely. And therefore the whole revenue stream that goes into funding a film in the first place is also going to be turned on its head. And there's no clear answer yet to what is going to replace it. I think about this quite often, and on paper, what we have here looks as if it's an incredibly vital, dynamic entity that is well supported by government structures and infrastructure. I think in reality, it's not quite as glorious as it might seem on the surface. And I don't know if it's necessarily a purely South African problem. I mean, I always say to people, if it was that easy to create a film industry, every country in the world would have one. My greatest concerns here involve particularly how the commissioning processes of the broadcasters fit into how you develop new filmmakers. It's quite difficult, I think, to break into the film industry in any way in this country, which really is leaving a lot of kind of frustration at the grassroots level. At a sort of, from the big international films coming in here, I think one of the problems that we've been victims of our own success, for instance, in Cape Town, where you have a huge amount of production taking place in the city. as an aside, I realized the other day that when I was on the board of the AFCI 10 years ago, the amount of work that we were doing in Cape Town was probably more than everyone else on the board put together in a particular year. But then you get the result that you have communities that no longer want filming in their locations, and you have, hotel rates that go up and up and up, and the general costs of getting everything done, which is then factored into a government process that, that there's a lot of, and I don't want to call it lip service, but basically it is, to being film friendly, that it's not transferred into actual processes that allow filmmaking to take place. So I think, we've got a great competitive incentive product that we're able to sell at a global level. We have these wonderful things like the new studios. We've got these fantastic production companies, depth of crew, quality product. The fact that we're slightly more expensive than we used to be is problematic, but we've transferred how we're seen internationally about being quality. I think on the surface that's true. I think underneath we've got a lot of work to do to actually make that the reality. Well, I think there's a challenge, first and foremost, and it's every time I speak to film training entities, that obviously young people want to be filmmakers in the sense that they want to be auteurs, they want to be directors, they want to be, the screenwriters. They don't necessarily want to be the hands-on crew that are actually putting the project together. And obviously, a film production crew, it's a pyramid structure. There's only one director. And I think that part of the challenge has always been in South Africa that because the film schools here are private institutions that are out to make money and sustain themselves, that there is less attention paid to actually filling the gaps in the crew base that we need to have filled. And then it brings it back into that, when you've created all of these great filmmakers at a student level, what do you do with them next? There's no easy way to get those filmmakers into a structure where they are able to make television programs or get the funding to make the feature films that they need to make. So I think that there are two issues at play there. It's not so much the kinds of people that they're turning out, but they're not necessarily dealing with the industry that we have, and also the local industry is not ready to absorb them in the way that the people that they are turning out. I mean, I've always been a little bit disappointed with the South African storytelling approach, because we really do have really interesting stories in South Africa. The challenge, I think, has been post-apartheid. Obviously, lots of people were prevented from telling their stories for a very long time, and there's a need to get through some of that. And I was always quite disappointed that the films that we were telling here were, they were wag your finger stories, they were lecture stories, and they were telling, they wanted to make a point, not tell a story. I think that we're starting to see the success of things like Jerusalema and White Wedding and that level of filmmaking are really just telling great stories in an entertaining way at an affordable amount of investment, so that it's not just political fundies who are going to enjoy the production. I think that there is a huge gap in the South African sort of the umbrella of product that we offer in South Africa. I've always thought that a kind of national film screenwriting festival. They do a really good one in Santa Fe, New Mexico each year, which is about the business of screenwriting, and that kind of thing would be a really great addition to this thing to get people, really understanding how this all fits together. Biggest problem here that there's no intrinsic value in the scripts that we're producing. We haven't created a market for scripts yet, and I think once we've created a market for scripts, and once producers understand that scripts need to be bought, and then we can start changing the dynamic. Well, there's a big problem, I think, generally in terms of audience and understanding what your audience is, and it's that same old question of who's a South African? What makes up a South African? If you're not attending to who your audience is, then you are missing the whole point, really. And of course, lots of young people, they want to make a film for all South Africans, and it's just never going to happen. Yeah. One of the interesting things, though, is that bringing it back to the digital story, I think one of the opportunities that understanding your audience brings in a digital environment is that it's much easier to get your stories in front of the audience that you want. So you can actually get away with a niche audience of, several thousand people for a product that is about a specific social issue if you've nurtured that audience. The challenge I think here is, just because you've made a local film that it should be on at New Metro is just, it's just never going to happen. And we're never going to create a film industry that way. The basics are, the great locations. The basics are the tourism accommodation and services that surround it. The basics include being able to get coverage of just about all of the jobs you require done to get a production done. Where all of that falls away internationally is it's all about the money. It's all about the cost. I do not remember a conversation as a film commissioner going back to 2004 that did not start, what are your incentives? The bottom line of how expensive we are is entirely an influence on how successful we are as a production destination in the international context, certainly. In terms of how you help a local film industry, there are tons of things that sort of need to be in place. How you make sure that filmmakers are always made aware of the opportunities that are available to them. The sort of the cross-marketing of industry, so that when I produce something on my DVD, it's got your trailer on it, so that you grow awareness of it. The audience, one of the things that's really struck me in South Africa recently is, having done a lot of work in Eastern Europe, that KwaZulu-Natal has the same Zulu population as the population of Serbia, has the same population as the Czech Republic, has more than double the population of New Zealand. And so the ability to create an audience of people who are interested in Zulu language film without actually having to go to MIPCOM it's there to be taken, but we're not quite there yet. And I think that kind of local level collaboration and information is one of the things that we need to be focusing on to make a difference. I think that there is still a social element to attending a cinema. And also, we may change the way we consume product in the Western world, or the Western influence world. But India, there's still more people going to cinema a day in India than go to cinema a year in the Western Cape. And that's all cinema going. It hasn't converted in countries like that yet to other digital means of consuming content. So yes, I think that cinema will exist, but I think the ownership of cinemas will change, and the big theaters in the States, they can't survive just on, the window that they have to make their money is closing down and down and down. So it's going to change. I don't have any clear answer at this point in time. We have a conference taking place at the Berlin Film Festival next month. We then are running a series of meetings at the Hong Kong Film Festival in March. And my first overseas trip is then to meet with the Asia Pacific Filmmakers Network and the Film Commissions Network of Asia in Korea in April. But then the big thing that we're working on now is what we call the Locations Show, which is 200 exhibitors from all over the world who come and try and sell their wares to the Hollywood production sector. And we are this year putting on a whole range of content that is looking at different ways to try and attract producers down to our show. Obviously, problem with film commissions now, everything that we do is online. So to actually have a physical show is kind of missing the point a bit. So to try and find interesting ways. So we're working with, the LA Times are working with us on doing a panel on the potential of a co-production treaty for the USA and various other elements that we're looking at, sustainability of incentive programs. We're working with Variety on a conference about the BRICS Summit, how the changing amounts of money from Brazil, Russia, India, China is going to change the way Hollywood accesses money and the way that things happen there. Variety is also doing an impact report on the 50 people to watch working on location. And then we're working with each of the industry associations in Hollywood to create specific product that's attractive to their members to come down and attend and listen. So that's my big project right now. I'm doing the content for that.